All right. Peace and blessings, Sapo. The Honorable One, the Success Scholar, Hakeem Shakur, me here. Yeah, been a little off for a couple of days, but been off. Uh, so had some good things going on. I want to, have a conversation actually, and I want to deal with a key issue. But first, I wanted to definitely let everybody to tune in each and every Mondays on www.elifemedia.net, Mondays, 8 p.m. Matter of fact, I'm not going to be long because I got a conference call coming up on doing media interviews. So I'll be getting ready for that coming up here really, really soon. So looking forward to that. But and I'm going to do some other videos in the probably tomorrow. I'm gonna, kind of get a little fresh and be real, sharp about it and have some things lined up. So definitely will be ready for that. So I'm gonna take this time to uh, first, of course, invite you all out. We're gonna have the FBI War on Tupac and other Black leaders coming up. We're gonna have a dope panel if you don't already know, but that's gonna be July 23rd, 1 to 4 p.m. We're gonna break it up into kind of two different panels and let some people get their flow on. So we can make sure that we doing some things right, getting this knowledge out there. But it's gonna be a full house for that. But holler at the Success Scholar. That's gonna be in Capitol Heights, Maryland, close to the DC side. So yeah, man. So I want to do this piece, and I was listening to the radio, of course. I have worked over the past few years in various urban environments, so I know what's going on, but not just from my, the street cred part of working in a particular environment, but also from studying. So I'm titling this "Who's Responsible for the Crime and Violence in Places like Chicago and um, and Baltimore, my hometown." And I wanted to do this because, again, recently there's been two cases, and I'm just looking at this like, man, like, is this like some serious mafia type stuff going on? Like, folk, in these high level various positions, are they like, having some type of Bumpy Johnson, uh, Nicky Bonds, uh, some Kenneth Supreme type of gangster thug wars out here. And what do I mean by that? Recently, the stepson of Warren Brown, who's a prominent attorney in the Baltimore area, his stepson, Warren Brown's stepson, was killed, right? And he was killed right next door to Muhammad Mosque number 6 in Baltimore, Maryland. And Warren Brown has been around for years. I know certainly he's probably like in his 50s and probably closer to 60 now, but he's been around, as like a kind of like an activist attorney, but you know, I mean, but it's almost like uh, I'm not going to say an opportunist, but his legal philosophy has evolved, I guess, because sometimes you would see him out here defending certain people, certain issues, but also actually defending criminals, criminals that, as he recently said, that he's no longer going to, uh, he don't see himself representing people that he know are guilty, right? And this is interesting, and sometimes people need, a type of wake up call. It's very unfortunate that individuals have to have someone close to their to them to actually think about ethics and morals and values. And I'm not trying to, condolences first and foremost, because I don't know, the nature of his stepson. But I do know that when you, as Warren Brown, has represented high profile, many high profile drug cases, kingpins, and just like everybody. It's like, look, your name out there. Like, I mean, you're dealing with people that's, they multi millionaires, and like your children, they don't play for um, they don't play games. So, and not that I'm saying that this was a type of hit on his son based upon the work of his father, or but you gotta start thinking about, just like when things like this happen. And he was with his other son. Now, his other son had had previous charges of what was it? Previous charges of transporting underage women for prostitution across state line. Now I'm just like, for sex or something like that. I'm just like, why would someone feel the need? And your father is like a high paid attorney. You got to be making, a few $1 million a year, very successful law firm. Why does his son have to feel like, a gangster, right? And then I thought about it. I'm like, there's a movie, and I can't recall the movie, but uh, let me think. One of these mafia movies where the I think it was the accountant started becoming more like a gangster, and one of the mafioso person told him, look at you now, walking around, getting high, something to the effect, pulling guns on people. I mean, and it make me think like how sometimes perhaps Warren Brown in his, lifestyle, the lifestyle, looking flashy, uh, just showing up and perhaps even being in environments with, high paid gangsters, could have created a very thin line, between, legal ethics, morals, and decency, and who you actually are, and the gangsters that you represent, and perhaps you may have gotten so close to some of these gangsters that, your son, or, his son may have began to see like, well, hell, my father around these people. Um, and it may have gotten to a point where it's beyond just, representing people. I'm sure coming up in Baltimore, I'm sure Warren Brown know who all of the people that were in the game and were out the game, and they may have gone clean, and they still probably own certain establishments within, the communities, and buildings, and land and cars and fancy cars and things like that. They probably go to some of these fancy restaurants and give money to certain politicians, so they have these, kind of the boule type of meetups, and at the nicest restaurants in downtown Little Italy with the other, mafioso people. So people probably all meeting and mingling, trying to get business, trying to get whatever it is that they do with the wealthy elite. And we got to know for sure that I mean, I'm just gonna look at this with the advent. and the bringing of the casinos to Maryland. It's just a free for all, full of for the ignorant masses, right? For the ignorant masses of people. You have the horseshoe. You have, what the hell is that? The I don't even know names of them. I know the MGM is down in Prince George's County. You have the horseshoe and something else in Arundel Mills. I don't go to these places, so I don't care to know much about them. And just recently they said something about casino made $130 million a year. But the one in Baltimore has went down. The one in Arundel Mills has gone down in terms of their revenue. But when you start bringing that element into Maryland, the Vegas mafioso connections, and that MGM element, these wise guys that may have actually started the whole Las Vegas. Actually, that's my understanding, is that they started Las Vegas. So you can definitely can read some of that history is definitely out there. So, and I'll just break this down. I mean, I was watching a recent documentary called Cocaine Cowboys when I was in Miami, and how the drug trade actually financed a large percentage of the growth in South Miami, South Beach, and North Miami, but definitely South Beach. How they would bring in drugs over there, and I was just riding down and looking at different things, and kind of, and that was my first time actually being in South Beach. So I was, really astonished. They had this Cuban Hebrew community. I was like, Cuban Hebrews? And then it just made me think about the whole, Cuban and Fidel and what's his name? Maya Lansky, and how they attempted to bring the casinos and the prostitution into Cuba, and Fidel didn't want that. But let me just go back. I kind of went off, but it just I just wanted to add on that, so when we look at a place like Baltimore, the pushers, the preachers, uh, the police, and the politicians. You got some politicians, for instance, in Baltimore, that most of them, and I looked at this years ago. I mean, they get money from the alcohol and beverage institutions, the liquor stores, the liquor store lobbyists, all of these folks that are lobbying to get these expensive $50,000 and $100,000. I can't remember the specific cost, but the liquor licenses, that's like a gold, to have one of these, things in Baltimore. And you got many unconscious Negroes who, they grew up in that environment. They Baltimoreized, they urbanized, and they just fall for the tricks, the poisons that are being pushed into our community, huh? So, that it reminds me of this part in this one of the in the Godfather, where they said, "You keep the drugs in the black community," or they might have used some other term, if I can't remember, but keep the drugs in the black community. So the politicians over on the east side had to be an east sider. He actually was caught drinking and driving. You saw a little picture of him, and I was down at City Hall like a couple of weeks ago, and I was looking at him. I was like, man, he looked like he just came from the damn bar. He looked like he about to go back to the bar after he leave the meeting. And I'm just like, oh God, this is crazy. You got politicians looking like they just got up out of an AA program, talking about saving your life. They're gonna be compromised. They're gonna invite these Negroes to Ruth Chris Steakhouse. They're gonna invite them to Lil Mo. No, what the hell? I don't even know the seafood place that drug dealers go to. Mo's Seafood, where the Negroes go, and think they think they're being classy, think they're being successful, and eating some damn some shrimps and some shrimp and what's the lobster, thinking they being fancy, huh? So they go to these types of places thinking they've arrived. So with that being said, you got the politicians, of course, and that was another one that took some money, and oh dum dum. Now you got federal charges, and now you got federal charges because they were investigating. And there was an NPR article some months ago, years ago, when Jack Johnson in Prince George's County was charged for doing these dirty deals with developers, and his wife was trying to stuff the money in the underwear. Like really, like like trying to stuff money in her underwear, not having no clothes on, trying to stuff money as if you know somewhere along the line they're not gonna see the stacks of money in your underwear. But it's just sad that Negroes can be so unconscious. They don't read anything. And for that uh, black senator in Baltimore to get popped, like that on some, $5,000 or whatever he tried to get from the developer, some developer from Texas, and you can look it up. Um, it was just sad. It's like, man, come on, man. You can't hustle. You 70 years old. You can't hustle up 5Gs legitimately. I mean, what are you trying to get? What do you need? What are you trying to buy with that money outside of going on a trip and party and then drinking? So some of these Negroes, they're so compromised that they never grow up. They never learn how to enjoy life. They got to be the life of the party. They got to, I guess, go to the fly hotels, and sit with, the so-called fancy people and eat some lobster and get drunk and go sleep at a hotel or something. So that's the politicians, and many of them, you know, do not have any real values, and ethics about how they decide to win. It's all about raising money and basically giving a good speech and feeding a few people, taking care of a few ignorant poor people. Maybe have a chicken box fundraiser for the leaders of a community, so they can, I'm sorry, a chicken box dinner or something, or invite you to some dinner or something, or invite you somewhere and take care of you, breakfast or something, give you a little bit of money. So, so that's what's going on with the politicians now. Recently, with the preachers, for instance, you had Jamal Bryant. He got into another little discussion slash little beef with one of these the 300 gangsters. So Jamal Bryant was trying to meet with the 300 gangsters. I'm like, you won't try to make me hot. You won't try to, build. And I mean, and I don't want to sound like I'm, selfish, that it's about me, but it's like, look, I can help more people if, I'm empowered. But some folk, they rather feel like they the smartest Negro in the room, or they got the most juice in the room, and they only want to be around little uh, people that need charity, the ego boost their massage their ego. So you got that's going on, and then there's this war for real estate in the minds of the people. I was riding through Baltimore rather recently, and my lady, which we were looking at the church, like, where the hell they put a church right there between, burn down store. I was like, these Negroes will put a church anywhere, and to get these, people to come and, all right, we got a real estate, we got a piece of property, probably ain't worth nothing, but you can pick up a Bible and probably learned it, who knows where, what you learn, and Negroes will show up. They don't care what's your background, long as you can sound good and massage their, just disconnect, the stress of a low intensity warfare drives people to these different churches. Once on North Avenue between North, I counted this like years ago, between North Pulaski and North and Payson, it's like 7 churches like in a 2-block radius. And all these Negroes, I mean, they probably thinking about what other property can I get, you know, or how can I, get more members from another church. So, all these folks are trying to get the ignorant, masses with some little gimmick to get these folks together. And many, for instance, struggling black men who their wives or their girlfriends up in there giving money to these Negro ministers so that they can get their bins or do a flight to San Francisco and fly right back, as I heard one prominent minister once say, or another minister that got a $10,000 pinky ring, while many of you are living in shambles, while you're living in a damn war zone, while you're living in a you know a Somalia, Libya, Iraq type of situations and conditions. So I'm saying that sometimes you gotta put some value on yourself. You have to put some knowledge in your mind and in your spirit to where you say, look, I mean, I know that, yeah, if you believe in, higher power and everything, but like, okay, there needs to be some reciprocity here. Like, look, I mean, I live in a shoe, like I'm not gonna keep living in a shoe and somebody else, because they supposed to be closer to God, they not leading me by direction, by proper direction. They're not guiding me. They're not being a shepherd. They're just kind of giving the word, just like, all right, I'm out. See y'all. I'm done. Peace. Let me go to my nice uh, condominium, wherever, and I can let the Negroes, the rest of you, kind of stay where you are. So I ain't gonna pretty much worry about that. But let's see. All right, I just opened up the chat in case anybody comes in. So uh, yeah, so with that, who else I want? So I spoke about the politicians, spoke about who's responsible. Who's responsible? Is it the politicians? Is it the preachers? And now we talk about the police, right? And some of these kind of intertwined, on some levels. I mean, I was just reading a book about a police officer that was a drug dealer in in uh, in New York. In New York, man, did I leave that book at work? But I have to cite the date. But I was this book is talk about a cop or something. Once a cop, but it made me think like about what I know, and I just take for instance what I know in terms of Baltimore. There's been cases I've talked to police officers. They are afraid of not just the streets, but they don't know who actually is on the take. They don't know who is like legitimate officers and who kind of in between and who are the upright officers. And I'll just say, for instance, there was a whistleblower police officer in Baltimore some years ago who something happened where an officer kind of roughed somebody up, and the one officer reported him, and later he was kind of taken off and didn't get promoted, and eventually they wouldn't show up for him. They would make jokes or make little statements to him, uh, you know and it began to get dangerous for him. to be in the streets and not know if people weren't going to back him up just because he did something, but just think about the high level type of things, that go on. Rather, just recently, there's been a federal investigation where 9 officers were charged with stealing money, and one of the officers, he's about to snitch in Baltimore. But I actually talked to one that said, man, he don't know, like, if they about to do a raid on a house, if some other officer, like, if that's his stash house. That's what he said. He don't know, like, if something is another officer's stash house, and that if they, tipped them off about things. And I read that. I just read some things about that happened in New York from a young drug dealer that became a police officer. And I'm just at the part where he was, dealing drugs, for the Supreme Team, and people say that that's partially based upon the story of the Nino Brown, New Jack City. But somebody else before said that story was kind of came out of the Detroit crew. And I don't know the brother's name, Kingpins in Detroit, but um, so that's what we dealing with law enforcement. Just there's no real accountability. And then, it's like, okay, there's a challenge with this drugs, because I mean, there's never been a time where you don't know what people are actually their mental state. So a lot of officers certainly are afraid in different interactions, and if they're inexperienced, they don't know the streets, they don't know the hood, they don't know how to interact with individuals, and I've seen that over and over. So then we have, the pushers. So I call it the 4 Ps. I call it the 4 Ps. Just like you got the 4 Ps of marketing, you got the 4 Ps of, community destruction or elevation. So uh, now you have situations where there's various levels of economic decay within, the communities, and people more so now are desperate. They're looking for resources. They're looking for answers, and unfortunately, people are not educated to adapt. People are not educated to think. To know their history first and foremost, why they're in the situation that they're in, and more importantly, how to strategically maneuver to get themselves out, of a particular situation, or how to organize. And unfortunately for me, and I've been studying these issues for quite, some time, and you know, not many, and I'm probably one of the only ones that's bringing it real, and that's why I can't, I can't like organize with, some of these individuals, because again, you never know, like, who, for instance, what's people's agendas, right? You never know, like in these different community meetings, who's really just like a little drug dealer wannabe or drug dealer. Uh, you never know who actually is legitimate, and who's going to be the snitch, who's snitching, who's the informant, shall I say, to both the police as well as the drug dealers. So people don't want to, deal with that. And this is why individuals actually, you know, remain silent about some things, because they don't know, they don't trust, they've heard enough stories. And just rather recently, a young lady who had been calling the law enforcement for harassment of her children, she was killed, after calling the police several times, and after um, after um, them stealing their bike, stealing the children's bike. It was just, mess, calling housing, doing things with housing. So, you never know what's actually going on behind these things. So I brought this up rather recently because it, I'm sorry, I'm bringing this up now because rather recently, on top of Warren Brown's, the attorney, prominent attorney in Baltimore, T.J. Smith, who's a Baltimore City, he's like the spokespersons, like their PR slash uh, public information officer type. He actually, his brother was killed on Argyle Avenue. Um, in Baltimore, and it just made me like think like, man, what the are people like in some, they like, all right, we gonna touch some people, like are they whacking people's brothers and sons? I'm like, are they, is there some a little plot to take out people who are in various positions? So I'm just like, man, you never know. You never know. And I'm not saying, TJ Smith, I don't know him. I don't know his background like that. I'm not saying anything to suggest that, he know anything at all because because you never know who's trying to send messages to people like, all right, look, you better not mess with this operation, or look, we the real gangsters in here. We really control Baltimore. Y'all just work here. Y'all just Baltimore City Police Department, but we the real gangsters here. We control the streets. So it's like there's a war. There's a warfare, and there are people who are legitimately, well-meaning. They want the right things for the community. But then you have, on the other side, got some criminals with uniforms, dope dealers with uniforms, and then you have, people that want to sell drugs, and then you have the kingpins on top of that, kind of looking at all this like, all right, we got some little ends. We got some little ends, selling and dealing, and they killing black cops' families and black attorneys, children. So who cares? All right, how much we make, whatever. So I'm saying, don't be a part of this, plan. Don't be allowing for your children and your children's friends to be used and manipulated in this oppressive society. And I'll close with this. There's a clip that you all can go through, several clips, but I'll talk. There's one on YouTube about Chicago gang members talk about guns, where a Chicago gang member reveals how he found crates of guns close to the train tracks, crates of guns. So I'm saying that when people talk about 100 shootings in a weekend in Chicago, as well as the whatever we had in Baltimore, there's something behind this. And another piece that you can look at, a documentary called Apocalypse Africa. Apocalypse Africa. Make the connection between the how the dynamics in Africa and these so-called these urban environments, and these young people with guns are doing the same things that young people in Africa. They don't have no shoes, they don't have no shirt, but they walking around with a big long gun, bigger than them, barely can hold it, but they can shoot, and they getting high off of these various drugs. The same things that's happening in urban environments happening in Africa. So I'm saying, those of us who are conscious, I say lock arms, come together. We got to be healthy, holistic. We got to free ourselves from this mind control, propaganda, low intensity warfare, not contribute to the destruction of our community, and not be not allow for agent provocateurs to personally discredit people like me, that's upstanding, that's empowering, that's doing the work to transform myself, of course, my community. So I say, do not allow for that to go on. So definitely share. Hopefully you all add comments, click like, and subscribe. Holler to Success Scholar. Support my movement. I definitely want to build this up a little bit more as well. So taking it here straight to the people. We're not going to deal with the black media that's not trying to bring no relevant empowerment knowledge. This is me putting in the work. I've been doing the most relevant work in the DMV as well as Baltimore over the past few months, past few years. So definitely, let me get on this conference call, y'all. So this webinar. So I'm out. Holla to Success Scholar. Peace.